Like a roll of duct tape rising from the ashes, Kawasaki has brought the legendary KLR650 back to life with bold new graphics, fuel injection, and not much else. Actually, that's not true at all. There's actually quite a bit of updates. Some people have said that they should have done more with the KLR to bring it into the modern world, but what most people are forgetting is that this bike, in base form, without the bags and some of the extra stuff on this one, is $6,700 US. That's insane. So stop saying it's $2,000 more, just $2,000 more to get a Tenere 700. That's not true. It's $3,300 more, which is a lot more money. 50% more expensive than this bike. What do you get for $6,700? Well, you get this large fairing for wind protection, you get an adjustable windshield, you get this wide, very comfortable seat, you get a 6.1 gallon fuel tank, you get a fuel injected single cylinder engine with a lot of torque, you get a 21-inch front wheel and a 17-inch rear wheel, spoke wheels, not the cast wheels that are gonna bend off-road. You get a big luggage rack with which a lot of more expensive bikes don't even have. You get a lot of equipment. Now, this is the adventure model, so it has Kawasaki's accessory LED driving lights here on this bar. It's got an engine protector bar. It's got the luggage. It has the power outlets, the world's largest USB power outlet, double insulated. I mean, you know, they took up half the fairing for that. I don't really know why. But there you go. You're never going to get any water in your USB port. I can guarantee you that. Another power outlet here. That's the switch for the driving lights. So what I'm trying to say is that this bike is an incredible value. So this is going to be a true first impressions ride. So I have not ridden this new KLR yet. This is truly my first time riding it. This is not a review. This is not a full review. We're not going to go through all the specs and comparisons and details. I'm just going to have you come along with me. As someone who's owned 6 different KLRs in my past, I've had the Gen 1 KLRs, I've had the Gen 2 KLRs. KLRs are what got me into motorcycling and it's how I met most of my friends. So this is my first time riding the Gen 3 and I'm super excited about it. Thank you, Jesse, for loaning me your bike for a few days. I'm not getting my press bike for another week or so. So Jesse agreed to let me use his bike for a few days. He just bought this because he's a big KLR fan. We're also going to be taking this bike right here down to Eagle Mike's in a couple days and doing videos about the doohickey. So we're going to be tearing into the engine on this bike and figuring out the truth behind the doohickey and a few other KLR issues that a lot of you have been asking about. So to sort of finish up the walk around, and we're going to go for a ride. Let's start at the front. So you've got an LED headlight, high and low beam, which is great that they're able to add that and keep the price the same. That's really awesome. These are not standard, but these do come on the Adventure model. If you don't get the Adventure model, you can add these as an optional accessory. They're very large, but I've also heard they're quite effective. This is the same front fender that they used before. I recognize it. The front brake has been improved. It's a larger rotor. It looks like the same really crappy skid plate, which you're going to have to upgrade, because if you look under here, it's kind of hard to show with the camera, but if you look under here, oh, this one already has a low profile drain plug on it. Jesse must have done that. But the drain plug in the engine case is just not protected enough by that skid plate. Same foot pegs as the old model, rubber, really crappy foot pegs, but what they have changed here is now they're rubber mounted. So see how much flex? I don't think people are going to like this, and some of the initial reviews have really complained about how these foot pegs feel. I know what Kawasaki is trying to do. They're trying to reduce the amount of vibration that the rider feels. They also rubber mounted the handlebars, and it's hard to show, but you can actually feel the flex in the rubber mounts. This is all to reduce the vibration that you feel. And supposedly they've done a really good job of that, but sometimes they can make things feel vague. Still some of the same KLR drawbacks, just little things you see like, why is this routed like that? This is going to catch on brush and tear off. Just weird things that you see them do, you know. This is a different rear caliper, I can tell you that. It definitely looks different than before. They've also made the rear brake rotor thicker. Coming around to the back, The exhaust is different. It still looks like the huge kind of tractor, like 30-pound exhaust it's always been, but it's quieter. It doesn't have the Tweety anymore, and it has a smaller outlet. Different turn signals and brake light, that's for sure. Different rear fender arrangement. I'm sure a lot of people are gonna, cut this off and do sort of a tail tidy kit. That's what I would do if it was my bike. I love the big rear luggage rack with the locking tool compartment. That's kind of cool to see that. As I mentioned, large, comfortable seat. Looks like plenty of room for passengers. These bikes are surprisingly comfortable, actually, carrying passengers, and some people have said they're one of the better bikes for that. You've got these kind of interesting grab handles here for your passenger to hold on to. The fuel cap is different now. It has this little plastic thing over it. The paint finish is actually, I really like it. It's kind of like this matte finish. It looks like it'll hold up better, and it's just really attractive. Handlebars are cheap steel handlebars, which you'd expect. Still the same cheap, hand guards, which, they protect from the wind and from some brush, but they're not wraparound guards that are going to protect your levers in a fall. The mirrors look a little different. They look like they come out nice and far, but we'll see how they work on the ride. Adjustable windshield. He's got this in the, I don't know what position he's got this in. I can't tell from looking at it. I think he, I think he has it in a higher position. Looks like you can move it down from there. I mentioned USB outlet here. It's only a single outlet, which is kind of strange. And why it has to have two covers, I'm not sure. Dashboard, we'll talk about that when we're riding, but they've taken away the tachometer and they've taken away the temperature gauge, but they've added a fuel gauge. So interesting sort of decisions there by Kawasaki. Looking around on this side, still the same chain final drive. I think it's the same gearing, 1543. Look at the front brake. You can see that larger rotor. They went up to a 300 millimeter from 280, but they're still using a kind of an old school twin piston caliper there. So now the walk around's done. You know what? There's a lot of fine details I want to go into, but we don't have time for that now. This is the first impressions ride. So before we get riding, oh, you know what? There's one thing I almost forgot. We have to get our toolkit. You have to get our KLR toolkit for this ride. You got to be prepared for anything that might happen on the trail. I've already got this all ready to go. So here's our KLR toolkit. The only things you need when you ride a KLR: roll of duct tape, zip ties, and a tube of Loctite, full, brand new, because you will go through a lot of it when you own a KLR. So we'll go ahead and throw our KLR tools in the luggage. See, it's nice that you could probably fit at least 20 rolls of duct tape in the luggage, so that's good. Get that locked up. Now we're going to go for a ride. Okay, we are ready to go. So, take this thing in neutral, side stand up, pre-launch sequence, ignite. So the dashboard, yeah, you've got a fuel gauge, clock, odometer, which you can have a trip meter too. And let's see, speedometer. And this is a dummy light here for battery or coolant overheat. It doesn't have the temperature gauge, but it does have a coolant overheat light, which hopefully you'll never see. And then you've got turn signal indicators, neutral, high beam, and a check engine light there. And we've got our driving lights on. So let's fire this beast, this 40 horsepower beast up, and see if we can handle the power. So the first thing I notice after being used to the old carbureted KLRs is, well, there's no choke lever, obviously. And when you start it up, it just feels very smooth, and it idles. It has a more even idle. You don't kind of hear that chugging. So the fuel injection's doing its job. We'll let this warm up just a second, since, Jesse told me to kind of baby it a little bit. He was worried about the dust getting on the screen and scratching it. He told me to, quote, not rally it around. So we'll see if I can hold up to my promise there. But the bike does have 500 miles on it, and he's done the first brake and oil change, so I think it's fair game. I think we should rev this puppy to the moon, send this thing into orbit. Okay, let's go. This is literally my first time riding it. Now, I forgot to mention, this bike does not have ABS, so you can get ABS on any of the models, and Jesse chose not to get it, which I totally understand. Although, if it was me, I'd probably want to get the ABS bike. I'm kind of taking it all in here. This is just kind of a big moment, you know, riding the new KLR. A few things I noticed right away. The first thing I noticed is that the wind protection's really good. We'll get it out at some higher speeds, but this fairing is doing a very good job. The mirrors vibrate just like they always have, so you might want to do something about that. You know, I feel very comfortable. The riding position feels really good for sitting down. The power feels comparable to the old KLRs. It feels about the same so far, but I'll have a chance later to kind of, you know, again, send this thing into orbit since Jesse told me not to rally it around. The fuel injection, some people have asked, is the fuel injection smooth? And I'm trying to figure that out right now. I'm kind of going on and off throttle. It feels pretty smooth to me. When I roll off, I don't feel any jerkiness. I'll have to experiment more, but it feels pretty smooth. Like, there's not a lot of acceleration with these bikes, okay? So you have to reset your expectations. It's just a smooth, kind of broad torque band. You're not going to go anywhere fast, but it'll get you there, and the torque moves you along just fine. My overall impression so far is I just feel very laid back, like I could just cruise all day on this bike. It's super comfortable right off the bat, right? And that's what the KLR's always been good at. And I feel like what Kawasaki did, even though a lot of people are complaining and saying why didn't they make it competitive, but you're missing the point of the KLR. The KLR is not trying to compete with those more expensive bikes, and they're not trying to compete with the KLR either, if you think about it. I mean, the price of this is crazy for what you get. It truly is. Please don't pull out in front of me, Bronco Sport. You're not a real Bronco anyway. It doesn't feel more powerful on first ride than the old bike, but I wasn't really expecting it to. But it does feel more refined and smoother. They have also changed the frame. I didn't talk about that, and this is not a detailed video going into everything, but the frame is now one-piece frame instead of a bolt-on subframe, and they claim the whole thing's more rigid. So that's good, and it also can carry more weight, which is good because, you know, I constantly see KLRs just loaded up like Beverly Hillbillies with stuff. It's crazy. The brakes, yeah, the brakes feel decent. They feel kind of soft a little bit compared to a lot of modern bikes, but again, this is a budget bike, and I think the brakes are good enough for what this bike is intended for. Certainly feels better than the old KLRs, even the Gen 2. If you rode the early Gen 1 KLRs, the ones that they sold up to 07, the brake on that was downright scary. I mean, it was dangerous. Like, if you weren't expecting it, it was so weak. But this brake is actually feels just fine. It's just easy going, and it has a lot of character and charm because it's comfortable. You can take it anywhere, and there's no pretense with it. It's not trying to be a super high performance bike, and because of that, your expectations are not going to be let down too much because you didn't pay a lot for it, and it's not trying to be like a rally bike. It's just trying to be an everyman's bike that you can commute on, you know, go on tour with, do dirt roads with. And for the majority of for the way that the majority of, you know, adventure riders actually use their bikes, this will do everything. This will go anywhere that your Yamaha T7 will, or your KTM 790 will. It truly will go there. It just won't be quite as fast, but it doesn't matter. You're still going to have just as much fun. You might even have more fun, honestly, than those high performance bikes. Okay, let's hit up this twisty road a little bit here. See, it gets up to speed okay. You just kind of have to wring its neck a little bit. Not having a tachometer, I mean, I know I complained about that in one of my early, you know, videos about the bike, and other people have complained. In reality, I don't think it's that big of a deal. It'd be nice to have it, but you can feel when you're in the power band, and you can feel when the power starts to kind of fade off and you should shift. Because these bikes, they don't make much, you know, they rev to about, they make power to about 6,000 RPM, and then they're kind of done. You know, the red line I think was 7,500 on the old KLR anyway, and there was, you never revved it out to red line. I think it might be a tiny bit faster than the old bike, but it's hard to say. It does feel smoother, more refined, quieter even. The chassis, I mean, I had a lot of miles on the old KLRs, and I would say that this chassis overall feels a bit more rigid. I feel less of that kind of noodly feeling that the old KLRs had. Maybe it's the one-piece frame. They've also worked on the suspension, so it's still very basic suspension. But they said that they've, you know, changed the settings, so they probably changed the oil and the damping characteristics and the spring rates, and I think they have a good compromise here. I mean, I haven't ridden in the dirt yet, but it really absorbs all these pavement seams and the potholes in the road really, really well. It rides smoother than my Yamaha Tenere 700, but I think the downside might be that off-road, you know, it's going to feel pretty squishy, but that's how KLRs have always been. You have to realize they have to have a compromise. They have to meet their budget and still provide a suspension that the average rider is going to feel is comfortable, and I think that they do that pretty well. You know, it always kind of makes me a little crazy when people, you know, they're talking about the KLR and they say, oh, well, you could just get a DR650 or a XR650 and it's a better bike because it's lighter. But that's wrong. I mean, it's not the same thing at all. Like, this is a legitimate touring bike. I mean, look at it. It's a 6-gallon fuel tank. You've got, you know, the new instrumentation. You've got this huge windshield and fairing. You've got this big, wide, comfortable seat. I mean, this is nowhere in comparison to like an old XR650L or the DR650. Those are just overgrown dirt bikes with soft suspension and ancient technology. People aren't buying those. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense, you know. If you're going to do a lot of off-roading, you don't get those anyway. You get something more competitive for off-road. But if you're going to use your bike like most adventure bike buyers do, which is mostly road riding, then you get the KLR because it's already set up. So I was going over all the materials for the bike, trying to memorize all this stuff. One thing that stood out to me is they talk quite a bit about how they revise the internals on the transmission and the clutch. And I will tell you, I can notice it. Like, the transmission shifts better than the old bike did. The old bike felt really clunky, and you would always kind of get between gears. There was a lot of false neutrals, at least in my experience. This new transmission feels more modern. It feels better, and I think that was a nice improvement. Again, for not really increasing the price on us, that was a nice thing to improve. Okay, so let's give the bike a little acceleration here. This is full power. Sorry, Jesse, if you're watching. Well, sorry, there's no tachometer. I don't know if I'm redlining it. Yeah, I mean, it's... the good thing about this is that it's not going to be intimidating for new riders, right? You're not going to whiskey throttle it. But the bad thing is more experienced riders, you know, are going to say, like, where's the power? But that's not what this bike is about. And you better know that before you buy one. But look, I mean, I'm going 60. I've already caught up to this traffic. Like, it's still faster than most cars. It's fast enough. And there's not much. Let's talk about vibration. So, you know, the rubber mounting of the bars and the foot pegs, like, you can definitely notice that. There's a lot less vibration you feel on this bike than the old KLR. And that's a nice thing. That's going to be a nice thing for touring, which is how most people use these bikes, or commuting or whatever. I think off-road, well, the rubber mounted handlebars would be okay, but I don't think people are going to like these foot pegs and how they kind of feel like they're flexing, you know. So that's something. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of changes. KLR riders, they love to customize their bikes, myself included. And I know Jesse will customize this, even though he's saying that, oh, he's going to keep it stock and just ride it on Sunday to church. I don't believe that for a minute. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of a highway speed test here. That's full throttle. 60, 65, 70. I have to watch for police because the speed limit here is actually really low. But I want to show you how it feels to cruise at 65. So at 65, it feels relaxed, no vibration, and the wind protection is surprisingly effective. Like, this windshield works amazing. I'm very impressed with that. Let's try going 70. This is miles per hour, by the way. 70 still feels pretty relaxed. You don't feel any buzz. You start to feel a little buzz coming to the foot pegs. 75. Yeah, I mean, this thing cruises unlike any other big single-cylinder bike. It's very smooth on the highway, and that's why people like these. Like, this has better wind protection than most of the expensive modern adventure bikes that I've tested. It truly does. Like, the fairing is very effective. And this windshield, my helmet's not vibrating and shaking. I don't have buffeting, so I'm very impressed with that. So enough with the highway stuff. Now we're going to go ride in the dirt. So just give me a second. I'm going to shut things down. I got to get over there to the dirt, and then we'll go for a short ride in the dirt, and then we'll have some final thoughts. Oh, there's the sign we want to see. Pavement ends. So the thing I've always liked about the KLRs in the dirt is that they have a very relaxed steering geometry. They're very stable and very easy to ride, relaxing on dirt roads. They don't have twitchy steering like dirt bike would. And also because of the soft suspension, they do pretty well with washboards and, you know, moderate impacts, and they give you a pretty comfortable ride. Of course, the flip side of that is if you start to ride more aggressively, you're going to bottom it out. I would say this new KLR is no exception so far. I mean, you can go in the dirt as fast as you want as long as you're not going to hit anything here. See, there's 70. I mean, it just feels very at home doing this, and that's what I love about these bikes. They're so stable. So they've actually increased the rake. They've made it even more stable and brought it up to 30 degrees. So I think that's a good thing because it just gives you more confidence on roads like this. The old KLR was 28-degree rake, I believe, maybe 27. So that's nice to see that they're going in that direction of more stability as opposed to making it, you know, more nervous handling, which a bike like this really doesn't need. Oh, there was my trail. Now let's talk about the weight for a second. People have complained and complained about the weight, but I'm going to tell you, it doesn't feel like it gained weight. Now I know, you know, that's probably unfair to say, whatever, but it doesn't feel heavier than the Gen 2 bikes. It really doesn't. And I noticed when I was pushing it out of the garage and doing some filming that it feels lighter than my Tenere 700, even though it's technically heavier, actually. So here's some pretty good bumps and stuff. You know what? Like, this is really, it handles really well on this. I'm kind of shocked. And the suspension is so soft and compliant, much more compliant than my Tenere 700 is. Like, it's a little bouncy and you have to keep your speed in check, but I really like the way this handles. It's just very easy to ride. You know, you feel like you could ride these kind of fire roads kind of all day long, which is what the KLR is all about. And because it has such a broad spectrum of torque, you can kind of leave it in like second gear and just sort of torque around. You don't have to shift very much. See, I can lug it down in second. The fuel injection has made it run smoother, so you can leave it in second gear longer. I'm not going to take that trail, that's for sure. Like, for most people, this is going to be all you need, and it's very easy to ride on stuff like this. And you know what? The suspension's not bottoming out. It's really not bad. I'm actually kind of impressed with how the suspension is working. Riding through these rocks, it really absorbs the bumps really well. The stock tires, I actually am a fan of these stock tires. They've been using these same tires forever on the KLR, these Dunlops, but I actually really like them. I think they're really grippy off-road and on the street. They're not a full knobby tire, but then again, they don't have the downsides of a full knobby tire on the highway. They don't vibrate and they corner pretty well. So if your riding consists of like roads like this, like BDR kind of rides, Jeep roads, fire trails, the KLR is fine. You can go anywhere with it. It's pretty comfortable, pretty cushy. Just don't try to pretend it's a race bike or a dirt bike and you'll be fine. But I genuinely enjoy riding this. And you know, I have a T7, I have a Beta 500, I have a GS, I've ridden everything. I have the Africa Twin. But I still genuinely enjoy this. This is fun, and you know, it's a back to basics approach. And I gotta say, I'm impressed with the handling. It doesn't feel that 450 pounds. Well, the base bike's 450. This bike in this trim's actually 480 pounds with the luggage and the lights and stuff. It doesn't feel that bad at all, though. So I'm gonna have to turn around here pretty soon because I'm trying not to get the bike too dirty, but I'm having too much fun, and I'm actually really impressed with how this thing is handling this trail. Turning radius is very, very good. Stop here for a second. Try to finish up this video because it's getting way too long. So I have so much to say about this bike. You guys can tell I really like it. I like KLRs, I always have. There's a lot to say here, and there's a lot of detail to cover, which I have coming up in future videos. I'm not going to get into all that now, but we are going to have videos talking about the doohickey, talking about the other engineering weaknesses of the bike. I'm going to have Eagle Mike on to him to talk you through all this stuff. We're going to have a Q&A, and of course I'm going to do a full review where I talk about everything in detail. And when I have the press bike, I'll be able to do a lot more riding, but I'm genuinely impressed with what they've done. I think that for the average KLR rider, not the 5% of you who want to go crazy with the bike off-road, because Kawasaki frankly doesn't care about you. They care about the 95%. That's who they have to develop the bike for. And I think for the 95%, people that are doing roads like this, people who are commuting to work, people that, you know, want to go on some trips, but their budget is limited. Their budget is more realistic. This is incredible. You cannot beat this. Wind protection, LED lighting, long travel suspension, 21-inch front wheel, comfortable seat, a 6-gallon fuel tank, all for, you know, $6,500, not including the luggage and the lights and a few things that this model has. But that's crazy. Where are you going to get that? You simply can't. And I know people want to do the comparison with the Tenere 700, and I am actually going to do a comparison video with that bike. It's a lot more expensive, and you don't get the wind protection on the Tenere, and you don't get the big fuel tank that you do on this, so this has some advantages, actually. And there are a lot of weaknesses which we're going to go through, but anyway, I got to cut this video off. I'm going to keep riding. I'm going to start heading towards home, but I hope you guys have enjoyed this first ride impressions of the new KLR. Please let me know what questions you have done in the comments, because I'm going to be doing a whole video dedicated to answering your questions about the new KLR. So please let me know down below what comments you have. As always, please subscribe, hit the bell. Please leave a comment. Please give the video a thumbs up, and consider being a Patreon supporter if you want to buy me some gas. Keep doing all these test rides on these bikes. Thanks so much for watching. This is Ian from Big Rock Moto. Ride safe. We'll see you soon.